Hey guys, and welcome to the Gruul Zoo primer. This video primer will be going over everything that is Gruul, including other color splashes, sideboard options, matchups, and a play of me playing Gruul for you guys and explaining what I'm doing. If you were looking for the overarching Zoo primer that talks about Zoo as a super archetype as a whole, that'll be in the links below, as well as links to Domain Zoo and Naya Zoo if you're interested in playing a different type or flavor of Zoo. This one's only talking about Gruul Zoo. Anyways, without further ado, welcome to the Gruul Zoo Primer. We're going to talk about everything that is Gruul and maybe other colors too. So what is Gruul Zoo? Well, it plays a lot like normal Zoo. That is that it values its creatures and it uses its burn to clear a path. But Gruul Zoo specifically has a little bit more of that creature-esque flair where the creatures can easily overwhelm an opponent. It's also really super consistent and very hard to hate on. If normal Gruul Zoo should feel like this when you're playing it, that you're literally just overwhelming your opponent. Or if you're like me and you're laughing the whole time while you're doing it, it feels a bit more like this. Why should you play Gruul? Well, one of the reasons why you would want to play Gruul over other types of Zoo, like Domain Zoo, is if you like turning a lot of critters sideways. Gruul Zoo is very good at spamming things out. It almost has that Affinity-esque feel where at turn 1 you're starting to go boop, 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 except it's turn 2 and you're playing a little less creatures than Affinity, but they all have like much more threat value and damage output. If you like consistency, one of the cool things about Gruul Zoo is that it's very consistent. There's very few deviations in its numbers. It usually has 4 of everything, so it's got redundancy against counterspells and like things like Thoughtseize, and even like if they're searching your library and getting rid of surgically extracting various cards, it won't really matter because all your creatures are almost the same thing. They just are very strong for very cheap. So it's very consistent. Your top deck is always great. And then not only that, but there's an always-on race option, which some of the other zoos like Naya and Domain Zoos sacrifice. It's that no matter what, even if you're in a bad situation, you can still race, and if they fumble, you'll probably win. That is always a great thing. But you shouldn't play Gruul Zoo if you don't like not having card advantage and a very slim chance of stack interaction. Now, I specified stack interaction because Zoo can still interact, but its interactions are usually proactive, where it's saying, I'm doing this so that you can't do this, rather than you're doing this and I react to it by doing this. The only time it does that is when it's creature-based and it's burned. And also, if you don't like card advantage, this is not the deck that has card advantage. It will go to top deck mode, and even though it will top deck mode pretty well, it will top deck mode. There's no questions about it. Eventually in that game, you will start top decking. There's no draw engines. There's very even few creatures that have utility to attach to them that allow you to get virtual card advantage either. So how do you build it? Well, the core is built off of Experiment 1, Burning Tree Emissary, and Flint Hoofboar. That's a core that existed from the online user Smiley when he first built it, and he saw that you could do this in Standard, but you could also do it in Modern, and it would still come off better because you have way more redundancy to evolve Experiment 1 in Modern. And it would do the same thing that Noctel was doing by swinging on turn 3. Burning Tree Emissary is your key to this deck. It is lets you double down your creatures on turn 2. If you guys don't know, Modern is very much a turn 2 format. I know they say it's a turn 4 format because that's when you figured games out, but really the game powerhouses on turn 2. Most of Modern's very strong converted mana cost is 2 rather than Legacies, which is 1. So Burning Tree Emissary allows you to get like a very, very strong push ahead, even if it's going to be things like Experiment 1, Burning Tree Emissary, Flint Hoofboar, Experiment 1, Burning Tree Emissary, Curd Ape, Rancor. Like, these are all great things you can possibly do with the Burning Tree Emissary, which should say basically costs 0 mana because you're doing something else with it. So that's the core of your creature base, that you're going to want at least these 3 creatures, as well as Tarmogoyf, Curd Ape, which is not up there, Gorklan Rampager and Lightning Bolt. The reason why Tarmogoyf isn't up there is I said it. So you're going to want those 7 cards in your deck, probably as 4-ofs. Actually, definitely as 4-of. Gorklan Rampager, you might want to cut down to 3 sometimes, but you will realize his value for Blood Rush is huge. Again, Lightning Bolt is just their best card in the format. You can't really go around it. Tarmogoyf is a beater. He costs a lot of money. That's definitely an issue for some people, and you can maybe replace him with something else. Hey, dog. Thank you. This is Tippy Toe. She is the zoo dog. Anyways, Tarmogoyf is big. He gets big. He survives a lot of things. That's his shtick, is that a lot of the time, if the game ends up going longer, he can go to 4 or 5 power for 2 mana, which is huge. Gorklan Rampager, at worst, gives you a 4/4 for 4 mana that has trample. At best, allows you to survive a lot of like burn effects or removal effects while denying chump blockers a chance to really stop you from dealing damage or kill a Tarmogoyf with it. Alright, so here are your other creatures that you got to consider. Vexing Devil, Curdape, which I said should be a 4-of, but you can iffy it. Vexing Devil is a 4 damage spell. It's basically a 1 mana 4 damage spell that can also pump Experiment 1 to a 4/4. The things you need to worry about when playing it is if it will just get bolted the minute it gets out there. Even so, if it gets bolted, that's saving removal from another one of your creatures. Or if the big thing here is that if you have an opposing Deathrite Shaman or Scavenging Ooze that will eat your Vexing Devil and then gain them some life back. It's still got a good value regardless, but you might consider just doing more damage. Strangleroot Geist is another one to consider. It's very, very, very good. It's a 2/1 with haste that will pump your E1, so you'll be attacking on turn 2 for 2 damage or 4 damage. And if it dies, it comes back even stronger and pumps your Experiment 1 again. The problem is it costs 2 green, and you really want to, because of the Burning Tree Emissary, get a red and green mana. So either green and anything, or anything and red, or green and red. Definitely does shift your focus a little bit to being a little bit more specific. Scavenging Ooze is very good. It only pumps Experiment 1 once, which is why it doesn't get the nod over Flint Hoof Boar, but it can become a very good mid-range card if you need it to go into the layer game. It can shrink Goyfs, and it could definitely be a semi-Goyf. Deathrite Shaman, you can splash other colors in the deck, and that's why I've got Deathrite Shaman and Loomlion a little higher up before I talk about the ability to splash. You do sacrifice a little bit of your land consistency to go into these colors, but you can get added value, Loomlion being basically a redundant Curdape, Deathrite Shaman being extra reach, and Mana Dork. The deck doesn't always need it, but it's nice, and it's worth noting that Deathrite Shaman does evolve E1 just once. Again, Curdape, we talked about it, great card. Goblin Guide is 2 damage for 1 mana. Haste, he can do a lot of damage on his own. There's a reason why burn spells put him as a creature regardless. And he does do a cool thing where even if he doesn't show a land off the top and they draw it, which is a 33% chance that he does give them a land, he allows you to see what they're drawing. So it allows you against like a deck like Control to know if they've got removal or counter spells. So it's actually not so much a downside as it is an upside. Lightning Mauler isn't the best card. These last 3 are not super great, but are definitely worth considering because of their power. Lightning Mauler can make you be swinging for 6 damage on turn 2 when you do an Experiment 1 into Burning Tree Emissary, into Lightning Mauler. Kelvin Marauders will always get hit in for 1 damage, plus have the upside of evolving E1 like Flint Hoof Boar does, as well as the hit for 1 when they leave and probably kill something on their way out. Luxodon Smiter is great against the rock decks and also allows you to evolve E1 to 4 on turn 3. So it's worth noting. Other spells you can consider putting in your deck. Well, Flame Slash is alright to put main deck. The ones you want to really be looking at are Dismember, Rancor, Vines of Vastwood, Pillar of Flame, and Searing Blaze. Those are the ones that you want to consider main deck, mostly. The other ones are just extras that you could add in if you'd like. Rancor does a lot of damage. It also can be... You can go ahead and do a E1 Burning Tree Emissary Curd Ape into Rancor, which is an awesome, awesome play for turn 2. Vines of Vastwood can save you from a lot of removal, a lot of targeted removal, especially from any American or American control or rock deck. Pillar Flame is good against anything that interacts with the graveyard. That's going to be things like Pod. Getting rid of those kitchen finks for 1 mana is super, super huge. Searing Blaze is great because it allows you to double down on your removal. Not only will it deal damage to their mana dork or whatever they've got attacking you or blocking you, it deals damage to their face as well, making it a great, great card against the Mirror and other aggro decks as well. Dismember is like that, but only in mid-range. It kills their Goyf pretty much dead instantly. It'll kill even things like Obstinate Baloth or whatnot, so it becomes a very, very good removal spell, even if though it's off color. The deck doesn't generally want white. It wants to stay in Gruul Zoo colors, which is just green and red. So Dismember sort of fills the hole that Path does not fill because you're not running white. Flame Slash is like a redundant Dismember. You can have it in your main deck. It feeds Goyf. It deals 4 damage, and it will probably kill a Goyf as well. But you need to... It doesn't do 5. 5 is the magic number for a Goyf. But it kills pretty much anything else that it could possibly kill. But it is a sorcery, so you can't do it instantly. Domri Raid is also very good because Domri will allow you to draw most of your deck. You're probably going to have around anywhere from between 26 to 32 creatures in your main deck. And Domri Raid allows you to really, really get a little extra gasoline. It gives you CA in a deck that normally does not have card advantage. And it can be removal if needed, so it's not that bad either in the fact that you can slide out a removal slot and put in Domri if you're facing a lot of control or something that you need gas for. Colossal Might is good because it can be played strictly off of a Burning Tree Emissary, and you can do it right away and give your creature a huge amount of damage output and pretty much trample over something if you need to. Worth noting, you're going to probably want... lands, I think, yeah, I talked about lands. Lands you're probably going to want around 18 to 20 tops. Other spells you're going to want anywhere from 6, I'd say, would be the minimum to 12. And then you're going to want anywhere from between 26 to 32 creatures. I wouldn't go over 32 creatures because you're still going to need some utility that like the other spells offer you. Lands here, you're going to want at least 5 to 10 fetches, 3 to 5 basics per each. You can go ahead and some decks even do 5 basic mountains and 1 forest. You could definitely do that as well. And you're going to want 4 shocks. And the 4 shocks here being like not Temple Gardens, but Stomping Grounds. And you're going to want at least 4 shocks. 4 shocks definitely if you're not splashing color. 4 shocks, more than 4 if you're splashing a color. But the splashing color is actually not something you want to do in this deck. But let's talk about what you get from splashing other colors. Before we even talk about what the other colors give, you need to be aware of what they do not give. You're going to be taking a lot more damage from your lands, and in a world where burn can kill you on turn 3 because you're taking damage from your lands, it may not be the greatest idea in the world. Likewise, you're opening yourself up for other aggro decks like the Mirror that just has Gruul colors, or the Affinity deck, or even Tempo sometimes, like a Delver deck, to race you because you're taking a lot of damage from your lands. You will be going down to about 14 with fetch lands if you were considering doing a greedy mana base of 3 colors that you want all the time. But it does give you stuff, and you can choose to splash for it. You just gotta note that not only does the mana base hurt you, but you're gonna be hurt off your Burning Tree Emissary. Burning Tree Emissary wants most of your deck, if not all of it, to be Gruul colors strictly. So you can't cast something like, for example, a Lightning Helix off of it, and that can be very, very big. You're going to be looking at things, but putting in white in your deck is probably the best choice, although you could add in black or blue as well. If you really want to go all colors, by the way, I highly suggest you check out the Domain Zoo Primer. But if you want to add white, you probably get the most bang out of your buck. And the white will give you Path to Exile, which, like I said, is almost a better form of Dismember. Because it exiles the creature rather than puts it to the graveyard, so that's great against things like Wormcoil. And if it has a bigger toughness than 5, like Wormcoil, then you're going to be able to hit it right away with just one mana. It gives you Boros Charm, which is great against board wipes. Not to mention, it deals 4 damage to the face, which can be huge because that's almost as good as Tribal Flames. Lightning Helix you get as well. And Lightning Helix is a lot like Searing Blaze, except it's a little bit more versatile. It really puts you light years ahead against other aggro decks. And it can even gain you life against the red deck wins, which is worth noting. Luxodon Smiter, which is a 4/4 for 3 mana. That can't be countered or discarded, so it's protection against the rock decks. Woolly Thoktar is huge because it can evolve E1 even up to 5, being that it's a 3 mana 4/5. And a lot of things in the format can't actually deal with a huge threat that early on. And Loom Lion, again, is redundant Kurt Ape. I put sideboard on there as well because it's worth noting that the white splash gives you a ton of sideboard options that you wouldn't normally have, including things like Thalia, Stony Silence, and Rest in Peace. Those are like the 3 off the top of my head that are really worth noting aside from Boros Charm and Path to Exile, because they really are things that will put a lot of cogs, a lot of clogs in the cogs, to say a wrench in the works. They don't really take up your tempo a ton because they still go on your proactive sort of game plan while screwing over your opponents and hampering their game plan. That is really one of the things that white brings to the archetype. But again, at the cost of your lands and having a consistent Gruul. Burning Tree Emissary. You can add black, which is another one worth noting, and this is what black gives you. And there's less here, but it is also very valuable. Abrupt Decay is one of the best removal spells you could possibly have in the meta right now. Thoughtseize is just a cure-all answer for proactive, making sure like bad things don't happen. It makes your combo matchup a hell of a lot better. You get Jund Hackblade, which is worth noting off of like a Burning Tree Emissary, comes into play as a 3/2 with haste. So that's huge because if you go E1 Burning Tree Emissary Jund Hackblade, you're looking at swinging for 6 damage on turn 2. Deathrite Shaman is great for reach, as I've said before, and is mana dork as well. It's a gain life ability, less relevant, but still allows you to come back from the fact that you're splashing and you're going to be damaged by it. And Dark Confidant is worth noting. It does evolve E1 on turn 2, just once, not amazing, but it does allow you to get a card advantage engine with a deck that has a relatively low casting cost for its creatures, so you're not going to be taking a ton of damage. And again, that discard does make your combo matchup huge. Blue, this one gives you things like counters and bounce and tricks like that, so like Vapor Snag would be the big one. Gives you Snapcaster Mage, which gives you virtual card advantage and doubles down your burn. And it gives you Cloudfin Raptor, which is like another experiment one, but flying and evolves again. However, I highly don't suggest blue. If you're going to go blue, you might as well just go tempo, do Delver deck. It's that easy. If you're looking at using Snapcaster to double down your burn and you're trying to hit in the air for a lot of damage, just Delver and Tempo is way better. It does give you counterspells, but this is in the deck that you want to have counterspells in. You can do it like Countercat did it, but it's worst comes to worst, you add counterspells. You really, really don't want to do it. And if you're playing in a meta that has a ton of combo where you need the counterspells, Delver's a better deck, and you're also going to want to go ahead and just like not play Zoo. Zoo's naturally bad against combo decks, so it's not going to be up your alley. And again, all of them hurts you, so you have to weigh the benefactors of will the taking the extra life and making my Burning Tree Emissary less good or less explosive outvalue the utility creatures or the reach or the sideboard options I get from splashing in other colors. Alright, so your meta is this, and I'm just going to run it down super quick. Rock decks, Affinity, Hexproof, Control, Scapeshift, Tron, Pod, Twin, Living End, Death and Taxes, Hatebears, Merfolk, Zoo, Storm, Infect, Elver, Soul Sisters, Red Deck wins, and Burn. I know that was a lot, right? Come on. So, those are your meta that you're looking at currently, and all of them have different matchups against you. Some of them are better with different types of Zoo, and some of them are better with the always-on race option that is Gruul Zoo. You'll notice that I've clumped a couple of them together, Death and Taxes and Hatebears, as well as Red Deck Wins and Burn, and that's because they are pretty much the same deck. They're not, but your sideboarding is the same for them. Hexproof. Your lucky green and red have a ton of options to kill enchantments, and that's what you're going to have to do against the Hexproof deck, the Boggles deck, because you can't really target their creatures because they will have Hexproof. What you need to do is make sure that their lifelink enchantments do not stick. That will make the game unwinnable for you. You still might be able to race them, but you need to make sure that that lifelink does not make it so they're doubling their point swing, that they're hurting you for a crap ton, and that they're gaining a crap ton of life. Destructive Revelry is the best in this batch because it's generally something you're going to have in your sideboard anyways, and it deals damage to the opponent regardless. So it allows you to shattering smash those enchantments. Declaimer is good because you might have it in your sideboard, especially against Tron for things like Wormcoil Engine. But Back to Nature really is the best. You can just cast a Back to Nature and watch the Aura's guy at 0 cards in his hand just weep. But I would only suggest having the Back to Nature if you in fact have a ton of that deck in your meta. Control. Really, there's only 2 cards worth noting for Control, and that's Vines of Vastwood and Molten Rain. You can, if you're splashing in white, you can get things like Boros Charm, Thalia, and a bunch of other sideboard options. But against Control, I really only suggest these 2 if you're strictly in the Gruul colors, which is probably better for you anyways. Molten Rain makes their long game not happen as quickly. Basically, with Control, every turn past turn 4-ish is you losing the game. So you want to win the game as fast as possible. And what Molten Rain does is it makes that turn 4 take a long time to get to. Turn 4 being that they put down 4 lands in that respect. You almost time walk them. You're dealing damage to their face while also stopping their tempo. They really need to get to 4 mana, to 5 mana really, to start turning the game around and moving it. And you delaying that and keeping that short game longer is great for you. Vines of Vastwood nulls out the removal, and I can't tell you how hilarious it is to go turn 1 Crit Ape and turn 2 like swing for 2 damage. They go ahead and they crack their fetch for a Steam Vents to take the damage, and they bolt the Crit Ape, and then you go Vines of Vastwood with the kicker. You're now taking 6 damage, and my guy does not die, so they've discarded a card and taken 9 damage, bringing them to 11 life on turn 2. It's awesome. The Rock deck, Vines of Astwood, makes another appearance. Again, the Rock deck wants to 1-for-1 removal you, and the more you can keep that away, because that's their early game plan against you, the better. It also helps you deal extra damage in the short run, making your chances of winning go higher. And it can be, at worst, used to set up a bad block. They try to block with a Tarmogoyf, you eat the Tarmogoyf instead of the Tarmogoyf eating your little creature. Molten Rain does the same deal that I said before, makes that mid-game take longer to get to, and the short game longer for you, being great. Flame Slash and Dismember are sort of the same deal. They deal damage to bigger threats, aka Tarmogoyf, and things like Obstinate Baloth or Scavenging Ooze. And they do it for a very small amount of mana. Again, the Dismember is not really going to matter because they're not going to race you, and if they gain control of the situation and they start attacking with their creatures, probably you're going to die anyways. Doesn't matter what your life total is. Mark of Mutiny, Traitor's Blood, and Active Aggression come in on the bottom. They do the same thing. They gain control of target creature till end of turn for 3 mana. The difference is Mark of Mutiny gives a 1/1 counter on that creature, which can be good and bad because it can help you get 1 more damage and finish that person off. Traitor's Blood, but it can be bad also because it's giving them a 1/1 counter, so when they get the creature back, it's stronger. Traitor's Blood can be good too because it allows you to have trample on that creature, so it doesn't even matter if they chump block, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage in there. And it feels great to steal their Goyf and just overrun them and kill them with their own Goyf. Active Aggression comes in, and it costs 5 mana. It's a 5 converted mana cost spell. Oh, it's okay. And it's 5 converted mana cost, but it can be casted for 3 mana, just like Dismember can be casted for 1 mana rather than 3. And the reason why it's up there, even though it takes 4 life away from yours, or less depending on how much red you have, is it's an instant, which means you can set up awful blocks, like they are attacking with a Scavenging Ooze that's a 4/4 and a Tarmogoyf that is a 4/5. You can steal their Tarmogoyf for that block, and then go ahead and block and kill their Scavenging Ooze with it. Or if they've got 2 Tarmogoyfs, you can steal it and deal nothing. You just set up a bad block. And you can also use instant speed to do it for an active aggression, just as said before. Scapeshift is pretty easy. You've got 3 choices, and then I've put Deglamour separately, Scapeshift and Tron. They all can be sided against Scapeshift. They can all be sided against Tron. They can none of them be sided against Tron. They can none of them be sided against Scapeshift. It's really just whatever you want to do. Sowing Salt will end the game very quickly with Tron, and also hurt Scapeshift a lot if you target their Valakut. Molten Rain is, like I said before, delays their game while upping your game, with the added bonus of you're breaking up their Tron pieces or their Scapeshift pieces and really screwing with their combo. Blood Moon is like an Armageddon in the fact that it's not like Molten Rain, which just you can play and delay the game, or Sowing Salt, which you're using as a combo breakup piecer. It's an Armageddon. You play it down, and you should then think about not having lands ever again. For either of you guys. It's just a permanent sort of like almost land kill enchantment for 3 converted mana cost. Really, it's great because if you lay it down against anyone and see their face, they automatically go from like, I'm winning, to just going like, what the hell am I gonna do with my life? There's nothing more raging than putting down a well-timed Blood Moon. But again, it has to be well-timed because it's a double-edged sword. It hurts you too. But the upside is, unlike Molten Rain, which can very easily help you win the game, Blood Moon can just win the game on its own. You could be swinging with a 1/1 dude while the guy can't do anything with his mountains and win the game. It's also worth noting that against Scapeshift, it does make Valakuts into mountains, and they don't have their triggers. Deglamour, I put it on the side because it's worth noting that against Tron, it's good, especially against like things like Mindslaver or Wormcoil Engine. They can still fetch it up later with an Eye of Ugin, but by then you'll probably win the game, and you do not want to kill a a Worm Coil Engine, nor swing into it if you can't win the game from them gaining 6 life off the swing. Deglamour also works against Scapeshift if they have things like Prismatic Omen. If they don't have Prismatic Omen, don't side it in. And even then, you might not consider siding it in. You might just think about overwhelming them. Affinity, again, you have a lot of cards for this Affinity matchup. Ancient Grudge is the best because you can double down on your removal spell there. You can either pay it as 2 mana and then kill something, wait, and then kill something else, or you can go ahead and just do it as a virtual Barter in Blood and kill 2 of their artifacts right away. Destructive Revelry is great also because it kills artifacts. It also kills enchantments, so it might be easier to have it in your sideboard. And it deals 2 damage to their face, keeping your race option open. Deglamour, again, like if you're dealing with Worm Coils, you might have in your sideboard, and is worth noting that it does kill an artifact, and that's important. Pyroclasm and Volcanic Fallout, you might have either or in your sideboard. They don't really do much damage to your creatures because all your creatures generally have asses that are 3 or higher. So this is one of the only times an aggro deck can side in Pyroclasm and still win. The other one is Creeping Corrosion and Shatterstorm. Both of them will just blow out an Affinity matchup if you can get to the 4 mana. And again, the deck usually uses 18 to 20 mana sources, so getting to 3 is hard enough than getting to 4. But it's strong enough to worth noting that if you play that against an Affinity, it doesn't matter what your life total is, there's probably a 95% chance you're going to win the game. Worth noting also while we're talking about it is Pyroclasm and Volcanic Fallout is very cool because it can't be sideboarded in against you effectively, which is what most decks like Tron and Scapeshift do, and even like control decks will side this in. It can't hurt you too much. It could be a 2-for-1. It's rarely a 3-for-1. It is usually a 1-for-1, which is not that great. And that's just one of the plus sides of playing Gruul Zoo is that Pyroclasm does not hurt you. It's very hard to be hated out. Pod. You're going to see very similar things here. All artifact hate stuff because it's relevant to get rid of the pod, although that's a decision you're going to have to make. Sometimes I don't even sideboard in the artifact hate because if they get out their pod and they're going to get out an activation with it, I'm going to lose the game. And sometimes you think about, if you have this and you can counter the pod, then it's awesome. But if they don't end up getting the pod and they just do their mid-range option and you just have this in your hand, it's awful for you. It's just a dead card. Pillar of Flame, however, never a dead card because it can always be used for removal. It gets rid of Finks, which is huge. It doesn't allow them to combo off with Finks, which is your worst enemy. Torpor Orb and Burning Tree Shaman. Burning Tree Shaman is not the most effective against this deck, but is worth noting that it does deal damage to them when they try to pod off things. But the problem is Kitchen Finks gains 2, Shaman only deals 1. You might have it in your sideboard against various other decks that exist, so it's worth bringing in if that's the case. If not, don't worry about it. It's not a huge sideboard option. Torpor Orb's way better because it stops their Twin combo if it's Kiki Jiki Pod. It stops their Melora combo if it's a Melora Pod. And that is that it doesn't stop the sacrificing. Sacrificing can happen a million times, but the enter the battle effect doesn't happen. So their red caps and their Finks can't gain them like a million life and can't kill you a million times. Twin. Here's where the Burning Tree Shaman becomes very good. Every time they make a twin, they deal 1 damage to themselves. If they're at 20 life and you're at 20 life, they will kill themselves before they kill you. Torpor Orb also stops it from enter battlefield triggers. Do not cause things to happen, which just nulls out their combo completely. Dismember and Combust are in a single column here because they're both removal that kills the creatures that will combo off. So you want those things in there to stop their creature combo. Deglamour and Destructive Revelry stops one part of their combo, aka the Splinter Twin, but nulling out 1/2 of their combo is very important, I think. Living End, you have a little bit of a smaller option for Living End. It's not going to be affected by all graveyard hate. And while I'm at it, I should note that Deathrite Shaman and Scavenging Ooze both do hate on Living End as well. Not effectively as these cards, but I didn't put them in there because I put them as main deck considerations. And there may also be cards that I showed in the main deck that work well in the sideboard. I just am throwing it out there. I've already discussed those ones. Moving on. Torment's Crypt is really good because it doesn't take up any of your tempo. You can toss it out whenever you feel like it, but you should note that it only deals with one side of the graveyard, which against Living End is enough, but against other combo decks maybe not, and does not effectively kill Glyphs. Relic of Progenitus does, however, affect both sides, and not only that, you can get some free exiles just off of tapping it before you have to crack it for 1 mana. So effectively, it costs 2 mana in its entire life, and exiles all cards from the graveyard, which is not a big bust for you, but allows you to draw a card, which is great. So it replaces itself. Now, Spellbomb does not do the same. It's just worth noting that it costs 1 mana, and you don't have to pay another mana in order to exile all the cards. It's still Tormat's Crypt's a better option. You're rarely going to have the black. It's worth noting if you have the black splash, but even then it's not that great of a card. You might want Tormat's Crypt. Death and Taxes. You're going to be looking at Dismembers and siding in Flame Slashes. You don't really need to side in anything against this because you should have a good matchup just simply racing. I put in Destructive Revelry down there. He's asking if he can be used. You might be tempted to use him, especially because they're running anywhere from 4 to 7 artifacts in their deck. It really depends on what you're looking at. Hatebears, I'd say no. They very rarely have Ether Vial, which is something that you're going to want to kill. And even if they do, it's only 4 out of their entire deck. Hatebears, though, may have swords. Usually Sword of Fire and Ice and Sword of Light and Shadow, one of each. And then it becomes a little bit more relevant, especially if they have, like, I can't remember what it's called, but the 1 mana card that allows them to search for that sword. Then it becomes a little bit more relevant to use it. That's something that you'd want to consider, because then they have anywhere from 4 to 6 to 7 or 8 artifacts because of the Shaping Steel or whatever it's called that allow them to search for that. Counts as a artifact card. And killing it will help you out a lot then. But only then. A lot of Hatebear decks will simply just run green and white creatures and some things like Path to Exile and maybe that Sun Lance. But that's all they'll run for other things, and then it's totally not worth siding in. Death and Taxes, it may be a little bit better to even, because they might run something like 2 swords, 4 Ether Vials, and it's more likely they're running Ether Vials. And then maybe 1 card to allow them to find a sword, so that'll bring their count up to 7. As well as maybe 2 to 3 Phyrexian Revokers, in which case Destructive Revelry is really, really good then, because you're looking at killing 10 of their cards. But there are some Death and Taxes that just use Flicker Wisp, and they will probably still have Ether Vial, which is great to kill, but if they don't have Ether Vial, this becomes a super dead card in your hand and you don't want it. So, you make a gut call on that one, basically. Merfolk, again, we're going to be talking about Destructive Revelry here. Destructive Revelry is less useful in this deck, but more useful if it hits an Ether Vial. The ability to put down 1,000,000 Lords within like 3 turns is obnoxious in Merfolk, and is by far the easiest way they're going to kill you. But Destructive Revelry is the most dead card in existence if they do not have that Ether Vial. And if they mulligan down to get the Ether Vial, then it's probably a fine matchup for you. The thing to note is that they have a ton of Lords, and you're going to need to become Removal Specialist. You're going to need to well-time removal so that you can maximize the most of their creature death. Whether that means you're attacking in with a Curdape, that's a 2/3, and they have out 2 Lords, and both of them are 3/3, and then instantly you bolt that that lord so the other lord becomes a 2/2 and dies to the Curd Ape, that is good. Likewise, Pyroclasm and Volcanic Fallout, to a lesser degree Volcanic Fallout, but more so Pyroclasm, is great against that deck, especially if you do it turn 2, because it will wipe their board. It'll wipe their board turn 3 probably as well. The important thing to note is that, let's say you have 3 lords out, right? You attacked with a Curd Ape. They blocked it with one of their 4/4 lords. That lord now has 2 damage checked on it. Then you Pyroclasm. That lord now has 4 damage checked on it, and it will kill that lord, dropping the other ones down to a 3/3 with 2 damage checked on it. And then you bolt the other lord. That lord is now dead, meaning that other lord that was a 3/3 is now 2/2 with still 2 damage checked on it and dies. So you've basically 3 for 3'd them, but it becomes bigger if they have out other merfolk that aren't lords and are just receiving the pump, and you're doing more like a 4 for 3 or whatnot. That was an extreme situation. You can also do it like if they've got out 2 lords and you do a 2 for 2 with a bolt and then kill their extra creature on the side too. It's just worth noting that's how those damage rules work for the merfolk. Moving on, a Zoo. Here are your big 3 options against Zoo. You do not want to use Dismember. The reason why is even though it kills a Goyf, that Goyf is probably only going to be a 3/4. And Flame Slash will do it anyways. Kitchen Finks is the best thing you could possibly have in that matchup. It'll kill 2 of the creatures probably while gaining you 2 life and making 2 creatures never have a hit your face. So it's huge. Not to mention you can still attack with it regardless. And Searing Blaze works the same way, that it's going to kill one of the creatures while still smacking them in the face and allowing you to alpha swing and be more aggressive. Other than that, if you don't find those cards and you don't have those cards in your sideboard and the opponent doesn't have any of these cards in their sideboard, it's probably a 50-50 matchup. Whoever goes first will win. That's really what it is. Storm. Storm, to really hate out, you're going to need white. If you don't have white, you're going to have to look at these options. Deglamour and Destructive Revelry work because it hits their must-have turned-on active Pyromancer's Ascension, and killing that is a huge blow to them. Mindbreak Trap and Thorn of Amethyst are niche sideboard options that you might have, but will screw Storm over anyways. Thorn of Amethyst will screw their engine working up to it, making their ritual spells not worth playing and making their card draw really inefficient. Mindbreak Trap you would go ahead and play in response to their finalizing their Grape Shot or Empty the Warrens on you, and you go ahead and say, I will Mindbreak Trap for 0. You don't worry about the bloom casting cost, you're going to be paying it for 0 in this matchup. And I will get rid of every single one of your stormed things. Was there something else to say about Storm? Yeah, right. Also, one thing to note about the sideboarding against Storm, you don't want to take out your removal spells. You might want to take out a few of them, especially if they're sorcery-speeded removal spells, but you're going to want to keep them in because the other way they're going to win is through Goblin Electromancer, and you need to kill that Goblin Electromancer. It's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't deal. The minute they've got a working Goblin Electromancer, it's going to screw you over. Infect, again, we're going to be, I seem to be repeating removal. But you're playing red, so removal is a very good option. And against Infect, it's a huge option. Those guys will outrace you simply because they can ramp into everything. So you're going to want to go ahead and just ton of removal their creatures. Unlike the Boggle deck, their shit does not have hexproof, so they might still be able to get around it with Vines of Vastwood and Apostle's Blessings, which if they do, you're probably going to lose the game. But that's how the cookie crumbles, man. But if they don't, if you keep them off of their few creatures, I think they only run a top of 11 to 12 creatures, then you're going to win the game. And what you're really going to want to do is put out a turn 1... a turn 1 like Curd Ape or not Loomline, a Curd Ape or Experiment 1 or something, and just swing with it and keep up the removal. Be the control with just putting constant pressure. Actually, it's more like tempo. Be tempo in that case. Delver. Here's some side options that you're going to want to do. You're not really going to need it because you're going to be really good regardless. Tempo is a very, very good matchup for us. Vines of Vastwood nulls out the removal if they're plugging in more removal to kill you on their sideboard. Searing Blaze will get rid of their Delver while still smacking them in the face, and that's huge against tempo. Volcanic Fallout, you'll notice that Pyroclasm's not on there. Pyroclasm not that great. Volcanic Fallout, however, great, because it's instant speed and can't be countered. And that'll screw up their man lands too, which is huge. Combust, you might have against Twin, which it's way better against Twin than it is against Delver, but you might have against Control as well, so it might be in your sideboard. It's worth siding in at that point because it'll basically do the same thing that Dismember does, only it can't be countered, and that's big. Grim Lavamancer, if it's in your main deck or if it's in your sideboard, sometimes I have it in either or. It's worth looking at because it'll deal 2 damage to creatures, and it's repeatable removal, which is the trick. It's repeatable removal. The reason why Grim Lavamancer wasn't in my earlier thing is because you rarely have things to feed your Grim Lavamancer aside from your fetch lands. In normal Zoo, Grim Lavamancer is much, much better, especially in Legacy Zoo, because you're going to be feeding a lot of burn spells and a lot of creatures and a lot of fetch lands here. Just a lot of stuff will be in your graveyard. In Gruul Zoo, you're not really going to have a ton in your graveyard. You're probably only going to have 4 cards in your graveyard by the end of the game, and that's it. Soul Sisters. Soul Sisters is a horrible matchup for us. The only thing we can really do is Volcanic Fallout or Pyroclasm to wipe their team, Torpor Orb to stop some of their combo-esque gain life, or Skullcrack and Flames of the Blood Hand to delay them a turn while we hopefully finish the race. If you don't have any of those cards, don't worry about it. It's not super huge. The matchup's going to be bad regardless, so don't feel bad about yourself for losing that game. Burn and red deck wins. There's really only one option here, and that's Kitchen Finks. You might have other things in your sideboard, especially if you splashed white, but Gruul Zoo normally only has Kitchen Finks up its sleeve, and that can help turn the tide. You just got the real trick is to be careful with your mana. Just fetch for basics is really what you need to do at that point. And you're going to be aggro, but you got to watch out. If it's red deck wins, you got to watch out for their hasty creatures that are going to be attacking you. You might want to keep a Curd Ape open to block. And if it's burn, you're just going to turn your dude sideways. The only creature that you really need to worry about at that point is Goblin Guide. And so real quick, I'm going to go back and just say that what the matchups are like for these decks. Hexproof is a pretty bad Game 1 matchup. You still have the race option, and pretty much all of these, I'm not going to keep mentioning it, but all of these still have a race option, where if they fumble or they just get a bunch of lands or they get mana screwed, you can still win just by simply racing. So the Game 1 matchup is pretty bad for this one. If you can get a Destructive Revelry, Back to Nature, or Declaimer, your opening hand, the matchup turns out about 50-50 after that, because you're still going to try to outrace them, but not give them their lifelink cards. Control, it's your favorite. It's probably, I would say, 75% chance of winning. They can God Hand you and just removal you, which sucks. But if they don't, all you need to do is be mindful of a Wrath of God. As long as you are mindful of Wrath of God and you're holding back one creature that can win the game, I usually will play like all my creatures and get as much damage in as possible before, especially if I'm on the play, before turn 4. And then when they Wrath of God me, I've kept a Flint Hoof Boar in my hand, and now I'm just going to play a Flint Hoof Boar, get in there for 3-6 more damage before they start gaining control of that Flint Hoof Boar and being able to really regain control of the deck, and then I'll just outburn them and kill them. Sideboard, after sideboard, they will going to be siding in a ton of removal for you, as long as you've got Vines of Vastwood and maybe Molten Rain to slow down that game. you're still going to maintain that 75% chance of winning. Mostly because their counters are useless to you. You just need to be able to read their mana. The Rock decks, this is a bad matchup for you. You are going to be looking at something close to 30-70%. 30 being you. Your chance of winning is 30%. Even after sideboard, if you side in everything in the world to hate against Rock, you're looking at a 40-50. 40-60% chance of winning. You're going to be at about 40. You're raising yourself 10%, but that's about it. Scapeshift Tron, you've got a great matchup against this deck. As long as you can avoid their Worm Coil Engine, which is what they're going to be trying to do to you turn 4, turn 3, as long as you can make that not happen with a Declamor, or you can get rid of one of their Tron pieces to delay that, you're looking great. You're gonna win that race option 9 times out of 10. Affinity, game 1's not so great against you. They're just a little bit faster than you, and unless you have well-timed removal and they don't get their nuts draw of putting out things like Cranial Plating and Ravager, you are very you'll be about 50-50 game 1 if they don't get the nuts draw. If they get those nuts draws, it's looking more like 70-30 you. 70-30 being that they're going to win 70% of the chance. After sideboard, you're actually much more favored, especially if you have Ancient Grudge or Pyroclasm. You're going to win that game. And the reason why is because aside from your main deck removal burn spells you already have, you're going to have your Artifact Hate on top of it with maybe your Pyroclasm on top of it, and you're just going to be able to outburn them. They're going to drop their hand on turn 1. You're going to go ahead and Pyroclasm or Ancient Grudge them to death. And then they're going to look at their empty board with you having just maybe one more value creature, even a Flint Hoof Boar. And they'll top deck while you're putting out more and more pressure and more removal, and they're not going to be able to keep up with you then. So then it flips it on its head. 70% chance you'll win, 30% chance they'll win. Pod, this is a bad matchup. It's a combination, it's a hybrid of 2 of our worst matchups, which is mid-range and combo. It's a 30% chance you'll win. If they stumble, it might go a little higher. If they don't stumble and get their Finks right away, you're going to lose. Finks is the death of you in this matchup. So it's a bad chance that you're going to... It's a very high chance that you're going to lose. So that's, I would say, 30%. If you can get your Silver Bullet to stop their combo, and you can maintain pressure and they stumble a little bit, then it gets a little bit better post-sideboard. But even post-sideboard, I'd say it stays about the same because they're just going to end up going more Finksy on you, and that's going to be really bad for you. Twin. Twin is also a bad game 1 matchup. Again, Zoo just has a historically bad matchup against Twin. If you can get out any of these spells and disrupt their first combo, you will win game 2 and 3. But most likely they will know about it and they will be trying to play a little bit more tempo-y and have some counterspell backup or something, or redundancy plans. I would say post-sideboard, a pre-sideboard it would be 30-70, again, not your favor. After sideboard it might switch anywhere from between 45-55 them or 45-55 you. Living End. This one's awful game 1. You're not gonna win. You're just not gonna win. Don't worry about game 1. You'll be able to look at what's in their deck as they're cascading, and that's something worth looking at. But you will not win game 1. You just won't do it. Game 2 and game 3, you want to mulligan down until you get one of your graveyard removals. If you can hit your graveyard removal, there's a very good chance you're going to win so long as you didn't mulligan past like 3. And that flips the matchup, I would say, towards being more in your favor, turning it into about a 60-40% chance for you to win game 2 and 3. You have to make sure you get that graveyard removal. You won't win as long as you don't have the graveyard removal. You cannot race Living End. Death and Taxes and Hate Bear. Pre-sideboard, I'd say it's probably like 60-40% in your favor. So long as you're very good at your early game and their mid game, you don't let their mid game pile up, you'll be really, really good. If their mid game starts piling up, it gets worse for you as time goes on, but that shouldn't be a problem in Gruul Zoo. And after sideboard, I'd say it probably remains the same, probably a little bit better. I'd say 60-40, maybe even 75-25, depending on what type of Death and Taxes and what type of Hatebears they are. And by the way, Gore-Clan Rampager is huge in this matchup. You should just know to use that. Against their Tarmogoyf, their Scavenging Oozes, anything that's bigger, you'll screw their game plan over. Merfolk is an interesting one. If you have removal, the game is really good for you. If you don't have removal, not so great for you. You can still race them regardless, especially now that they're trying to be a little bit more tempo-y rather than aggro-y, with things like Thassa and Master of Waves, which you can still delay them on, and P.S. Master of Waves is awful when you play a Pyroclasm against them anyways. Because even if Master Wave doesn't die to the Pyroclasm, everything he owns dies to the Pyroclasm. So, yeah, removal is great against here. If you can't get the removal, just do the race option. I'd say it's still in your favor. I'd probably about 65-35% in your favor post and pre sideboard. If you have Pyroclasm, it probably jumps up to about 75% in your favor. Zoo, again, 50-50 matchup. It depends on who wins the role and if you have a Kitchen Finks or Searing Blaze or not. 50-50 regardless. It's a mirror match. Storm, not going to be in your favor at all game 1. Game 2, if you have any of these sideboard options, it'll be maybe a little bit more in your favor, especially if they stumble and you can Deglamour or Destructive Revelry their Ascension before it gets active and continue on racing. That's my suggestion against this deck. Just race. Just always try to maximize your damage output. They're not really going to interact with you sans a Bolt. Infect is a pretty good matchup again. Like I said before, if they have the what do you call it? Vines of Vastwood or Apostle's Blessing, you're probably going to lose the game, but that's, again, 7 cards out of their entire deck. Good, they're going to have to wish they can get it. If not, the Infect matchup is pretty good for you, so long as you start out with constant pressure and then use your removal wisely. Delver's a great matchup. I'm just going to say it's 75-25. Even with the sideboard, it's still strongly in your favor. They have to sideboard in a lot to try to make the matchup a little bit easier for them. Meanwhile, your main deck is just unnaturally strong against their type of deck. Soul Sisters is a bad matchup. It's just one of those, again, Soul Sisters is either really good or really bad. And in this matchup, Soul Sisters is really good. It's trying to do the complete opposite of what you're doing, which is you trying to get them from 20 to 0. They're trying to get from 20 to higher. So it's just going to screw you over while they put out creatures that will eventually kill you. Yeah. Burn Reddick wins. Also, again, you have to fetch really, really wisely, not take as much damage from your lands. Kitchen Finks will help out a lot, but the matchup would probably be 50-50 and very much matter who's going first. Alright, guys, so let's look at some lists now. Up here, I've got a list for us to look at. This is your general version of what your Gruul Zoo is going to look like. Again, Burning Tree Emissary, huge. Experiment 1, huge. Flint Hoof Boar, huge. Gore-Clan Rampager, huge. Kurdape, very good. Tarmogoyf, super good. The added-in cards here that I've chosen are Goblin Guides and Vexing Devils. Vexing Devils just feel very powerful to play, and I think it's a good starting place if you guys have never played Gruul Zoo before, or you're just tweaking your Gruul Zoo. Vexing Devil is a great choice. Dismember in the main deck is there to replace the 2-0 for Path that I normally have. 4 Lightning Bolt because Lightning Bolt is awesome. 1 Tarfire because I had an extra slot open and it feeds Goyf, as well as things like Seal of Fire feeds Goyf as well. And then I've got 2 Vines of Vastwood in there. I was finding that there's a lot of removal floating around right now, and main decking of Vines of Vastwood is a very good idea. If you weren't going to main deck that, you could use that for even more removal if you'd like to, a Domri if you'd like to, or depending on whatever the meta is, really. Hi there. Copperline Gorge is your defunct 2, just gets you up till turn 3, which is when you need mana anyways. Come into play untapped land while giving you both of your colors. Forest is great. You need a basic forest regardless. Misty Rainforest is your fetch land. As you've seen here, there's 5 fetch lands in this entire deck. 5 mountains, because red is super important. If you look at the creature base and you look at like all the amount of burn in it, it's mostly red. Stomping Ground is a complete 4 of. No reason not to, especially since it pumps your Crit Ape. The sideboard, I've got Relic of Progenitus against Graveyard Shenanigans, Turbo Orb against like Twin Shenanigans, Active Aggression against mid-range, Destructive Revelry is my catch-all, sort of enchantment answer and artifact answer, Binds of Vastwood against more removal than I'm expecting to see, Molten Rain because it's awesome in the meta right now, hurts Twin, hurts Control, and that's really what you're going to see most of, and Pillar of Flame because I need some more removal, and Pillar of Flame was a very easy one that I could throw in sideboarding, and has the upside of being able to get rid of things that are going to affect play if they go to the graveyard. Alright, let's see what we got here. Gruul, play, say hello, hi, hey, roll the dice. I win the roll, yay! Winning the roll is big. And this looks like a great hand, because we've got a turn 1 Experiment 1 with a turn 2 Goblin Guide at worst. If we don't get ourselves something else, we can do a Flint Hoof Bore. And he mulligans, so that's great for us to keep. And there goes our Experiment 1, and we're going to pass. He's going to crack a land, and I always like seeing land cracked. He might crack for a basic, and that's okay, too. Looks like he's playing a mid-range deck, like a rock deck or something. That's fine. It's not the best thing I'd like to play against. I could see him taking out the Goblin Guide of the Dismember, really. I can't see him taking out the Bolt or the Flint Hoof Bore. Because he's worried about that. He's worried about that fact that I might be able to guide. Double guide would have been hilarious. So I'm gonna go ahead and Goblin Guide here and make him sad. That would have been funny to see, anyways. With the Goblin Guide. If I got a double Goblin Guide out, that would have been funny as hell. And he gets to draw that land, so that's fine. We are making sure he's not going to be mana screwed today, buddy. If he wants to get out the Lightning Bolt with the Inquisition, I don't mind that either. Again, like he's doing it correctly. It's really more important that we have creatures that are attacking, especially one that could gain haste next turn. We're going to hold the removal here, because even though it could be used to burn the face to maximize our damage output, it's better for us. Gore Clan Rampager is a good draw. It's better for us to use it as removal to make his mid-game non-existent, if possible. There goes another land for him. Man, that Goblin Guide is a winner. But I don't mind too much, because he's at 10, and we set up a bad block for him next turn with the Gore Clan Rampager. And we can also go ahead and, or maybe he's a rack deck. No, he's getting all the basics and stuff. So I think I'm going to bolt the Liliana right now. Although if I bolt his face, that brings him down to 7. And then I can attack for 2, bringing him down to 5, and Gore Clan Rampager him down to 1, making all my stuff live. I think that's what I'm going to end up... Well, makes all my bolts live, but makes my creatures not live. And I think I'm going to probably draw a creature anyway, so that's not that big of a deal. I'm going to lightning bolt the face here. And I did draw a creature, like I thought. In this case, I'm actually going to cast the creature here, hold on to the Gore Clan Rampager, and attack Liliana with the experiment one. Because he's already down at a low life, and my Gore Clan Rampager survives most of his stuff. That guy is now a 5/4 too, or 5/6 too, which is awesome. That was really one of the best draws we could have done. I mean, a bolt probably would have done it too. I don't know what he's going to be able to put out with 1 mana. Maybe a chump blocker is what he's looking to put out. He's just a rock deck, and he's going to end up putting out a chump blocker. Yeah, so we got the game. Good game, dude. Sure. So winning that game 1's pretty good for us because it allows us that if we lose the game 2, which is very likely, that we will be able to go first again. So I'm going to sideboard in the Molten Rains here and my Active Aggressions and even the Vines of Vastwood. And the reason why I'm going to side those in, that makes it 7 cards I have to sign out. I'm going to side out the Tarfire, the Bolts, and the Dismember. That's a lot. I agree. I'm siding out all my removal / reach, but I'm the beatdown deck in this option. I'm not the control. He's the control. So it's better for me to have those options than not to have those options. Although these all become way better on the draw as well. I'm going to keep it because it gives me a hand with Goyf, Flint Hoof Boar, Gore Clan Rampager, Molten. It's all good stuff. It's all really good stuff. And I also, one of the main reasons why I took it was it's not super effective against what I'm putting out. His best thing that he can get out right now is the Guide, and I hope I don't draw a 1 mana cost spell. Because that's the best thing he can do to preemptively not let me do a big game plan. But it also makes my Tarmogoyf way better too. So I'm going to crack this for a Stomping Ground, and the next turn I'm probably going to crack it for another Stomping Ground, so that way I can have the Molten Rain active whenever I get to have it active. And I'm going to go ahead and Burning Tree Emissary into... I'm going to go ahead and Burning Tree Emissary into my Tarmogoyf. He's probably going to take away my Tarmogoyf now. Again, not a huge deal, as the Gore Clan Rampager and the Flint Hoof Boar will still do a lot of damage to him. He took that Emissary. That's an interesting call. He must have Liliana next turn. I forgot to crack. That was totally my bad. Stomping Ground. Stomping Ground. So I know he's got the Liliana for next turn because that's what he's trying to set up right there with the emissary, so that I can't he can't edict me. So me putting out the Flint Hoofboar here denies him the chance of being able to. He's still going to edict. I mean, he's got to, but it's going to deny him the ability to edict my my Tarmogoyf. And I'm going to attack straight here. He knows that I have the Gore Clan Rampager. If he decides to block, that's crazy. He knew I had the Gore Clan Rampager. He knew I had it. So that would have been a 3. It's a 3-4, so going over yeah, that's fine. That's correct. Just making sure he's doing that correctly. The reason why I'm attacking first before doing the Molten Rain is because it's letting me use my Vines of Vastwood if I have to. He's probably setting up a removal spell right here, and I can punish him for it. Oh, am I gonna get disconnected? Damn. Oh, cool. I didn't. I had a choice here. I can either, I probably want to knock out his Godless Shrine, to be honest with you. I don't know why he's not playing anything, but that's probably because maybe he's got nothing but mana spells in his hand that cost a lot more. But this is the reason why I'm going to go ahead and use the Molten Rain right now. Sure, Abrupt Decay. But that's delaying his early game. He might again have a Liliana, which is fine. But next turn, if we get a mana, we can get our Gore Clan Rampager out there, and we can get the Goyf out there regardless. Hopefully we get a land. Get a Vexing Devil. That's good enough. So many people are watching me. I have so many friends. I mean, this means he's going to Liliana here. I see no reason for him not to Liliana. I was playing around the Liliana. Kitchen Finks, okay. I guess he's got no Liliana, no removal. I was overestimating that. He knows I've got the Gore Clan Rampager. Why does he set himself up for that? And I'm going to leave this open so I can Vines of Vastwood a removal spell that he's got if he tries to do it. Because I'd rather have him out there than the experiment one. He knows I've got the Vines of Vastwood, so I can't see him playing into it either. I guess we won. Anyways, guys, I don't want to keep talking to this guy. So, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you want to check out any more or talk to anyone about building this deck and needing any advice or want to talk to me, go to go to MTG Salvation. You can Google it, MTG Salvation. Go to the more modern forums to find any of the zoo primers there, and go ahead and talk to us about that. Be nice to your animals, and remember to feed those animals.